Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for this virtual town hall, specifically geared for businesses, those that have already been open, but also the ones that are getting ready to open, and those that are ready to extend some of the services as well, including the dine-in, including customers into the buildings. I know for the last several months, I want to say about 2 months or a little bit less than that, we have been going through a global pandemic. And first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being part of the solution in addressing COVID-19 and what it has befallen our community. And thank you very much for being part of this. And before we continue, I have with us too Mr. Alberto Perez. He's our city manager. Mr. Perez.
Good morning, all. Glad you can join us this morning. We know everybody has busy schedules, but everything we're trying to promote today is obviously very basic. We want to restore the consumer confidence that they can feel safe to come out and shop at your businesses, considering everything we're going to talk about here today for you to commit to.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. We also have with us as one of our panelists is Ms. Dalinda Guillen, our EDC Director. Ms. Guillen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, for having me on this morning. I'm happy to talk to our business community about what's up with the new order and what to expect.
Thank you, Ms. Guillen. And we also have with us our Code Enforcement Director, Mr. Gilbert Milan. Mr. Milan.
Morning, Mayor. Morning, everyone. Yes, we like to share some of the techniques we're going to be using when inspecting some of these places or restaurants also.
So today's goal is to look at, from a business standpoint, and please feel free to submit any questions that you might have, is to, as we are considering, of course, the reopening and the practices, best practices to continue to address COVID-19, it is imperative that we follow certain protocols. And as I was saying earlier and alluded to it earlier, I sincerely want to thank everyone, business community, as well as the residents in general and people in general of Rio Grande City and the surrounding communities of La Grulla, Escobares, Roma, Starr County as a whole. Thank you so much for being part of the solution. Thank you for continuing to comply with all the protocols that we have set up in place in order to combat COVID-19 and to minimize the spread of COVID-19. And by and large, our county has done, and our cities and our county have done a tremendous job in slowing the spread of COVID-19. And how we've gotten there is a contribution and commending many individuals, many entities that have gotten us where we're at today with minimal cases. But we want to continue that way. And although I've talked to many individuals who there's a genuine fear in reopening, at the same time, there is a safe way to do it. There is a precautious way to do it. And that's really what we're here to talk about is, as we're considering and as we're moving to reopen our economy, our businesses, how do we do it in an effective, efficient way that's going to continue to help us combat COVID-19. And there are ways, there are protocols. We have already been practicing many of these protocols as instituted by our municipalities in Starr County through orders. We have implemented, of course, many of these practices, and by and large, businesses have complied and individuals in general have complied. So again, thank you so much for being part of this solution. And the idea today is, how do we continue to combat COVID-19 and many of the same practices? And here's the difference. And this is where we need the buy-in from the business community. At this point, on the latest executive order by Governor Abbott, municipalities, local governments are not able to enforce the mandates such as facial coverings. Now, there's certain minimum standards, and for those businesses, I encourage you to make sure that you, if you haven't so, there's the Open Texas Governor's Report to Open Texas, and it outlines specific detailed ways of the minimum standards to continue to operate. And those, it's imperative our code enforcement will be out and about to make sure that businesses are following the minimum standards. However, we are wanting to do more than the minimum standards. And that is where we need the buy-in from our business community. And what do I mean by more? Well, let's start with facial coverings. That is, facial coverings, as per conversation with our local health authority, it is something, it is a practice and a protocol that's it's imperative for us to continue to practice. Now, as a municipality, we're not able to enforce this, this protocol. However, the business community can. As a private institution, as a business, you are able to enforce and mandate the facial covering of the employees as well as your customers. And that is where we're asking the help of our business community to continue to require facial coverings as part of conducting business. And I'm not talking about a recommendation. I'm asking for the business community to require facial coverings. And we're trying to do and institute this through the month of May. Now, things can change. Obviously, we're monitoring the situation. As we're reopening, I am concerned that we might have more cases as a result of reopening practice or reopening the state. However, we're still, at this point, we're committed to reopen. We are going to help the governor through this process, but at the same time, we're wanting to do and safeguard the public health and welfare. And this is something that we're asking businesses to do. And what we're trying to do here is we are implementing a program, a campaign of best business practices related to COVID-19. And we will have a program through a decal, through a top-rated best business practices, Rio Grande City top-rated. And we'll talk more on the details as this, but just know that this is something that we're promoting as a campaign where businesses will be instructed on how it is that we will be rating the businesses and the protocols that they must follow. And again, this is more than satisfying the minimum standards. You have minimum standards set by the state. However, here in Rio Grande City, what we want to do is go beyond the minimum standards, because in the current standards, it's recommended to wear a facial covering, for example, but we don't want to go with a simple recommendation. What we want is an actual mandate or a requirement by the business, depending on how you sell this to your customer, of course, that this is for their own health and wellness. This is for their own safety. Plus, we're going to be advertising and promoting your business as a business that's following the best top-rated practices for combating COVID-19. And we'll talk more about this, but today I want to roll out this type of campaign. And at the same time, get input from businesses, because we want you to be successful as well. Believe me, as a government, as a mayor of the great city of Rio Grande City, I want to see our businesses succeed. I want to see our economy succeed again, and to reignite our business community. As prior to this, we were We were in an excellent position, and we're going to continue, by the way. I am confident that we're going to get through this. I'm confident that our economy is going to get back, if not better than it was before. I know it's going to take some time. I know there's been some losses in wages and, of course, the unemployment rate. However, we are in the process of reigniting our businesses, our economy, and the hope of the people to get back to buying, get back to some normalcy. So with that being said, and I'll get back to that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Albert Perez, our city manager, and he'll talk a little bit about some of the plans in place that we have in business in general. Mr. Perez?
So thank you, Mayor, again, and welcome everybody. Of course, we could not do this without your support. Obviously, the success in the county and Rio Grande City area is attributed to everybody doing their part, especially businesses. Businesses are the key drivers to all of this. The mayor stated, the governor changed the rules and the enforcement side of it. So we're looking to the businesses to help us get through this so we can not only be successful, but restore the confidence in the consumers in coming back out and making sure that they feel safe, that they're coming to an area that's being sanitized, that everybody's using a facial covering. Everything that we're talking about here, the reference to the Open Texas government booklet from the governor will be posted on our website. We'll make it available digitally. The next step they're looking at, okay, so we're asking you guys to help us support this endeavor and continuing to take the best practices till the end of next month so that we can restore the confidence from the consumers. Well, what is it what are we going to give you back in return for continuing to do those or practice those measures? Well, we're going to be recognizing the businesses by going out and validating that they're doing the not just the minimum as the mayor described, but that they're continuing to ask for the facial covering, not just for employees, but their customers, that they're disinfecting the common areas, that they're maintaining social distancing within the businesses. Well, we're going to recognize each business and identify who they are as we go along. And we're going to do several things. One, we're going to pass out a sticker that's going to be posted at the entrance of your business. If you have multiple entrances, we'll take care of every entrance. And this is going to be basically a sticker that's going to say, hey, you're a top-rated business that's following all these measures for best practices. And we want the customers to recognize it. So we're going to put this on social media, on our website, so everybody understands what we're trying to promote here, not only as a business, but customers can understand what it's about. We're also will be posting, all the detail, the businesses that are following these practices. We want to promote your business as one that goes above and beyond the norm. And so we would like to recognize each business that's going to commit to this going forward by not only putting your business on social media and promoting it, but also on our city website. We'll create a different web page identifying these businesses that are continuing to not only follow the minimum standards, but are going above and beyond. So every step of the way, we want to recognize you and give you credit for continuing to support these endeavors and keeping the community safe and healthy. So this is key. Well, what are those criteria? We're going to post those criteria as to what we're looking for you to be recognized in our website. But as an example, the mayor already touched on it. If you require your employees to continue to have a facial covering, and you also require customers, that's key. That's what we're looking for. If you continue to disinfect your common areas on a regular basis, that's what we're looking for. If you continue to enforce social distancing, that's key. So all those key components will be outlined for your business. Restaurants, obviously, will have separate guidelines. We're going to have to make sure that you are only allowing 25% of the customers back in based on what the fire marshal has designated your capacity is. So every business will be looked at and visited by a code enforcement, verifying and validating, and they will be receiving this sticker that will be placed on their window at the entrance of their business, and it'll be recognized by everybody as to why it's there. Any questions along the way? We open that. You can call us. email us, and we'll make sure we'll go through the list and answer those and post the most commonly asked questions so that everybody's on the same page. But the key behind everything is your commitment on how you're going to operate and ensure that we keep our community safe and healthy going forward, at least till the end of the month. Would you like to add anything else, Mayor, on that?
Absolutely, and to continue along those same lines this is a commitment that we're asking our businesses to follow. It is a commitment by our business community to continue to help us combat COVID-19, and again, for the health and wellness of our community, and at the same time promoting your business as a top-rated business, as a business that's going above and beyond the minimum standard set by the state. And I cannot reiterate that point enough, is that as a local government, we're unable to enforce the facial coverings, for example. And that is one thing that is a must. The facial coverings is something that we need to continue to follow as a protocol, as a practice, and not just a recommendation, again, but an actual requirement by the business community. And at the same time, we want to promote your business as well. So it's a twofold. It's a win-win for everyone. As a business, you win by promoting as a top-rated best business practices, and at the same time, as a community, benefits by combating COVID-19. And I'll be frank with you, I am concerned that we might have a spike in COVID-19 positive cases if we don't follow and continue to follow the protocols that we have been thus far, that we have been practicing as a community, where all of us have been able to commit to all these protocols that are in place. Again, and you already have heard this numerous times: the sanitation, the facial coverings, the social distancing, and all these practices that have made a tremendous difference for our community in minimizing the risk of contracting COVID-19. So it is imperative, and I know that probably repeating myself, and I am, but that is how important it is. And I plead to our business community to commit to safeguarding the health and wellness of our community and the customers that visit your stores, the customers that will be attending many of the functions, and the businesses and shopping here in Rio Grande City and the surrounding communities. So with that, we also have Ms. Dalinda Guillen, our RGC Director. Ms. Guillen?
Yes, Mayor. Just to echo in what you said, we're encouraging our business to be stronger in their enforcement of these safety practices. Although I would like to say that many of our businesses which have been open during this period have already exhibited those quality traits that we're looking for: the disinfecting upon entering, the signage reminding any customers of the proper safety protocols. And you see it in our local businesses, and what we want is for them to not lessen that level of activity that they have at their stores right now, because we know that as more people come out, given the change in order, that we anticipate that there might be more opportunity for exposure to the COVID virus. And so we want to make sure that our businesses are continuing their practice of safety at the workplace, and disinfecting and wearing their masks, and encouraging their customers to do the same. And so I have to applaud our businesses, those that have been open and allowed to be open during this time, for all they have done to keep us safe, making sure. I know we have representatives from H-E-B and Walmart on this call, and have to applaud them for ensuring our safety when we go get our groceries and medication. I know they're out there disinfecting their shopping carts as we go in, making sure that we're following the social distancing in their stores, offering up prescriptions to be picked up, at curbside with special phone numbers and such. And so they're already doing the best that they can to ensure the safety of their employees and their customers. And what we want to come out of this is a stronger economy. Obviously, it has hurt Rio Grande City, and we want to make sure that when we are reopening to the public, that people have that confidence in coming in, and that our employers and our businesses are able to maintain that customer base coming without exposing anyone to anything that might keep them from taking care of their business at our local stores.
And Mayor, if I may add, we'd like to let the businesses know that we have 300 gallons of disinfectant we'd like to make available to them. We'll set up a truck this afternoon at the park, Basilio Park, specifically for businesses only. So if you're a small business owner and you don't have access to disinfectant, that this will help you, please come on over. We ask you that you bring a container that you can fill up so you can have access to it.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. And to business community, that is available. It is free, and it's disinfectant. So we have 300 gallons. How many 300 gallons of this disinfectant available to businesses? So please, this is a way for us to continue to promote our businesses and have that little grain of sand to continue to contribute. I know it's been difficult, and to reiterate the point that Ms. Guillen just mentioned, many businesses have already been operating, and they've done a tremendous job already in reference to combating COVID-19 and following all the protocols. And what we're asking is to continue to follow those protocols and not just revert back to minimum standards. But I applaud our business community, and because if it weren't for our business community, it'd be difficult for us to combat COVID-19 as effectively as we have thus far. And of course, our community that is committed, and I've talked to many business owners in the last few days and weeks that I reiterate the point about this pandemic, this global pandemic. And as we're looking at this, we're in a sense combating a global pandemic, something that we maybe in our generation will never see again. We hope that we don't see again. However, maybe future generations might see this, but not in a single generation. However, having said that, thus far, Rio Grande City and Stark County as a whole, I think because of the help of individuals and the commitment, we have done very well in maintaining the low numbers of positive cases. However, we cannot let our guard down. We cannot. Absolutely, it is imperative that we continue with the level of urgency that this requires. And for 1 second, we let our guard down, and unfortunately, that can bring dire consequences to our community. And that is why we're here pleading to our business community, and we will do the same to the general public as well, to continue to help us in this and promoting the level of urgency that we must continue to have in order to maintain low level of cases here in Stark County. So to our business community, we will make that available today, the disinfectant. So please feel free to come by, and we will have it at the Basilio Park, Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez, are you there?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I was on another call. Sorry, I missed that last part.
The disinfectant will be at the Basilio Park.
Yes, sir, the rest of the day, and if we need to keep it out there tomorrow, we'll do that, depending on the demand. If they're not able to come today, just give us a call and we'll make it available.
And with us, we also have Mr. Gilbert Milan, our Code Enforcement Director. Mr. Milan, is there anything you would like to add to our conversation?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Just to rest assured the community, we're here to help and to safeguard, minimize, to enforce minimum standards in addition to the new health protocols from the governor, such as, self-monitoring of employees, face nets, gloves, sterilization of equipment, and washing facilities, proper food handling, certification of employees, and now the new protocols of, the parties of 6 people or at least the most 6 people and 6 feet apart. Make sure that there's hand sanitation facilities at the entrance of restaurants. And again, just to make sure there's the minimum standards are followed.
Thank you, Mr. Milan. And with that being said, at this time, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask any questions. Can you help us with that, Ms. Guillen? Any
Yes,
specific questions
yes,
that might be coming in? Go
yes,
ahead.
we do have a question from Betty's Daycare, and we have her question is, how would this work for a daycare?
Well, once the daycares are opened, then it will follow the same protocols at that point, because what we're doing is we're following the governor's orders, and as per the governor's orders, depending on what their specific minimum standards are, and based on the conditions that he sets forward for municipalities, then that's how we're going to be able to, at that point, develop a plan for that institution or that type of business. For example, whether it's a daycare, whether it's a barber shop or a salon, we should be getting in the next couple of weeks, as per Governor Abbott's last conversation that he had, or the last conference that he had, that barber shops and other types of salons will be opening sometime around mid-May. And with that, he'll have certain minimum standards that they must follow. And we will be looking at those standards. And based on those standards, whether we have at the local government level to be able to add any additional standards, and whether we're able to enforce any additional standards. And it will be based through, of course, our local health authority as well, and the recommendations by our local health authority, and those would be determined at that time. Just like we have at this point, where the governor already outlined certain minimum standards for restaurant, dine-in, for retail, as they're welcoming customers into their buildings. That is where these standards we are looking at, and at this point, these are the type of standards that we increase simply by continuing to use facial coverings, for example. That's something that we are promoting. Unfortunately, we can't enforce it, but businesses can require it as part of their doing business. So going back to the daycare, once that is implemented, once that is in place, then we'll set those standards along with the governor's orders as well. At this time, we're still. Go ahead.
If I may add, when we post the minimum standards, it's outlines for employers that for them to follow those guidelines, and that's what we're going to be looking for. So the daycare can look at that list, and it outlines for the employer and the employees and what to do.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Pitt.
Mayor, we have another question from the business community. Which businesses will be allowed to open, and what is the criteria used to determine which can open, since many of these businesses offer food, beer, and entertainment?
That is based on the governor's orders, and in fact, also in our latest orders, the ones that are not, for example, retail, restaurants, we're still not, for example, with barber shops, salons are not open yet. I know, for example, that the governor opened theaters. However, theaters are not, by the Theater Association, they're not going to be opening until mid-summer, I believe, or mid-June, somewhere along those lines. So even though he's opening certain businesses, does not mean that the businesses, of course, have to open. That's up to the individual business if they're ready. In fact, I spoke to a business owner of a restaurant a few days ago, and she's contemplating not opening until later this month. As far as for dining, they're still doing the curbside and delivery, but not the dining at this point. And that's going to be an individual decision made by the owners of those businesses. So as of yet, still we're looking at adult daycares not opening yet. Same thing with barbershop salons, any type of businesses that are human-to-human contact. However, going back to those barbershops and salons, for example, I know that they follow strict protocols and hygiene and sanitizing, and that is something that I've talked to many of those owners already, and they're ready to open as well, and they're committed to following the best practices as well, beyond whatever minimum standards are set by the state, which proves something that our community is willing to do, and thanking our community for going above and beyond. And keep in mind that what we're asking for, businesses are already doing it. Businesses, I know that many businesses are going to continue to follow best of practices without even us asking them for, because that's something that they're committed to their customers. So reiterating the point, we do have some of those that are outlined in the executive order, which we have available at our website, and also our local orders. But off the top of at this point is, for example, barbershops are not yet, the salons are not, massage parlors, tattoo shops, those are not open at this time. But as far as restaurants and retail, those are all available and for opening. And some of them have, some of them have not. And again, theaters, even though, gyms, for example, gyms have not, the governor has not outlined yet for gyms to open as of now. And that's something that I'm sure the governor will be outlining in the next few weeks as to when gyms will be opening and the protocols and minimum standards that they must follow as well, which with gyms, we'll do the same thing. We're going to look at the minimum standards set by the governor, and then at that point, through conversation with our local health authority, determine if there are other protocols that they also can follow, so that way they can be under the best business practices related to COVID-19.
What about coin operated? Was that included in the order?
Which one again?
Coin operated venues?
You mean like the maquinitas? Is that, are those the ones that, those entertainment, Mr. Perez, can you help me out with that? I don't believe they're following certain practices with those.
They were not mentioned by the governor, and talking to county officials yesterday, they're going against it at this time. So we're going to follow whether it's coming from the governor or from the county. And as of yesterday, the county was indicating they were not going to allow those to open yet.
And in fact, I'm with that as well. I mean, there's alongside many of the reasons why I would not want to even allow those type of venues. But aside from that too, there are many issues and protocols that they must follow once they do. But of course, these are legally operated establishments as opposed to any type of activities that require other types of attention. Well, we also have, by the way, Police Chief Castillo and our Fire Chief, Chief Muniz, on the line. Chief Castillo, is there anything that you would like to add to our conversation?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, Mayor, the order that the governor issued out changed the way we do a lot of the things, and some of the outlined orders that still in sticker ones that you guys mentioned, and those might be changing in the next few weeks. You know, the only thing I say to the community is that again, just to echo what you're saying, is that we need to
You're breaking
continue
up a bit,
to
Chief.
keep our community safe, and you know the part where our families come into play along with the rest of the business community is that if somebody does get sick because of COVID-19, we're not going to be able to be there with our loved ones and our family members. So you know we can do it together. I know that this is a tough time for everybody. The laws changed a little bit. There's not going to be a curfew anymore. No more citations for that. But I think it's important to continue what we're doing. And you know, if we could answer any questions for anybody at this time, you know, we are available. Our office is 24 hours, and you know, if there's something that needs to be set out there for the questions for the city, you know, they can call the police department, and we'll forward those and get them an answer as soon as possible.
Chief Castillo, can you clear that up in reference to the curfew? Because we do have a curfew in place as per city ordinance for minors. And that's not related to COVID-19 curfews that we had established. Can you clarify that just to make sure that everybody's on the same page?
That is correct, Mayor. We do have the ordinance, and the ordinance was specific to 19.
You're breaking up, Chief.
I'm sorry, Mayor. It's inside the building. Can you hear me? The order for curfew that we have is a city ordinance that was passed back in 1995. That order is in effect. It has nothing to do with the COVID-19. That's keep minors off of the streets at night after a certain hour. We are going to be putting that out on our the city's Facebook page and the police department's Facebook page in a little while, so they can know the difference in the definition. You know, the ordinance covers from Sunday through Thursday, and there's a specific hour that certain groups can be out. I think it's 16 and older, and they have to be an adult after the 10 o'clock hour from Sunday to Thursday. On Friday and Saturday, it's till midnight. So it's got little specifications on it, but that is going to still be in effect. That order was put in place by commission back in, I think it was 1996. So that's in effect, and we will clarify this and put it out there for the public.
Just to reiterate that point, thank you, Chief, is that we do have a curfew for minors. That is by city ordinance, so that continues. What does not continue is the COVID-19 specific curfew hours. That those have expired or will be expiring tonight. But as far as the curfew for minors through our city ordinance, that will continue. So again, just to clarify that there's still a curfew in place for minors, and we will be posting that. We'll have it on the website. So that way, in case people have questions regarding that, as far as curfew for minors versus curfew as established for the COVID-19 global pandemic emergency plan and orders that we had established prior. Also have, can you turn off your mic then, please, Chief Castillo? We have Chief Muñiz from our fire department. Chief.
Yes, good morning, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. Yes, just to echo what you've been saying, Mayor, I do agree with that about the businesses and doing what they can to secure the public. As far as I've been in contact with several businesses yesterday and today as far as doing the occupant load. If they have any questions, contact me. I've been answering those questions as I've been doing those occupant loads. Now, so far, only restaurants have been notifying me. This is for actually any type of business who wants to get an occupant load on their business, just to contact me at the fire department so we can send somebody out there to do the occupant load for them. Other than that, I have nothing further, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Chief. And to our business community, please reach out to law enforcement or our fire department if you have any questions or follow-ups. they'll be glad to answer your questions. And please, again, feel free to contact them and make sure that you get your questions answered as we continue to work together through this recovery period of this COVID-19 global pandemic. Thank you, Chief Muniz.
Mayor, we have another question coming from the restaurant community.
Okay.
In the dine-in areas for restaurants, obviously the question is also about are we allowing dine-in or only takeout?
As per the new order, there is a dine-in, and there's that 25% of capacity at this point. So there is a component, and please look at the governor's report to Open Texas and make sure that you are informed with the minimum standards set by the governor as far as dine-in. And there's certain requirements for dine-in, including disposable menus and several of the other items, whether it's condiments. So look into all that. If not, please follow up with some of the questions to our code enforcement. And but there is a component starting tomorrow, Friday, allowing for dine-in as per restaurants, but with that 25% occupancy, as Chief Muniz was outlining. So there is that component. There's certain recommendations laid out by the governor as far as the employees and customers and the sanitizing and the disposable menus and several others. So please look into that and be well informed. We have access to that governor's report on our website. And if for some reason you cannot get one, please ask us for a copy and we'll go ahead and direct it to you. And of course, questions can be asked of our code enforcement. But going back to answering the question, yes, there is a component. However, at this time is 25% of capacity for dine-in. And there has to be that social distancing. So get familiar with those protocols. And with that, remember what we talked about earlier. We're asking restaurants, we're asking businesses to continue with the facial coverings. I know for restaurants, it's going to be a little bit different when it comes to facial coverings for the customers, but when it comes to facial coverings for employees, that's something that we're promoting. But for the customers, facial coverings as they walk to their seat, once they sit down, of course, then at that point, they can certainly remove those and follow the protocols as outlined, which is social distancing, spacing between family units. That's also outlined as per the governor's orders. And please do read that report. If not, please follow up with our code enforcement, Mr. Gilbert Milan, and he can answer some of those questions regarding the minimum standards set for restaurants, for retailers, for employers, and plus the additional best practices if you at this point are committing to following those best practices.
And Mayor, I will just
Go
add
ahead.
that it's important that that especially your dine-in restaurants are also get a hold of the commitment form that is on the city website that they've got to submit, that any restaurants and retail, any businesses that will be opening in the city should have one of these downloaded, signed, and returned to our planning office, and let our code enforcement office inform them on the specifics of the dine-in restaurants. I'm looking at the order right now, and I know it's got some details in there that our local businesses need to be aware of. But this form is something that, just like we heard the county the other day put out the retail to go commitment form, this is the same form that we've got for the city of Rio Grande City, and it must be filed in our planning office, and it is available for download on our city website.
Thank you, Ms.
If I may add, Mayor, also just to remind everyone, we will have the disinfectant at the Basilio Park open only for businesses. They need to let us know what business they represent, bring containers. If they're not able to go today and we miss them tomorrow, they can call us at City Hall at rgc-tv0672. Just ask for disinfectant and we'll make it available to them. Again, we'll open it up this afternoon after lunch at Basilio Park. Bring containers so you can take disinfectant if you don't have any. You're welcome to it. If we do miss you, call us at 487-0672 if you need access to it.
Thank you, Mr. Perez, Ms. Guillen. Any other questions, Ms. Guillen?
I think that's it.
And just continuing to reiterate the points, please feel free to call in, call City Hall. Let's make sure we do this the right way, make sure we do this the effective and efficient way to continue to, one, promote your business, two, continue to reignite our economy, and three, continue to maintain the health and wellness of our community. And we can do this. We can find some equilibrium, some balance in trying to reopen our city, trying to reopen our county, and at the same time continue with the safe practices to continue to minimize the impact of COVID-19 in our community. It is doable. We can, we must, and we will do this. So again, to our business community, thank you so much for what you've been doing thus far. And for businesses that will be opening tomorrow or continue to expand, we definitely wish you the best. We want you to succeed. We want our businesses to continue to do well in their business. And we want to help you with this by promoting your business as well. So again, I cannot say that enough about a win-win situation where we promote you and at the same time, your business will continue to impart, returning to, if not improving beyond what was already established prior to COVID-19. And it's been difficult. It has been a challenge for all of us. Our business community has been impacted tremendously. And as I've spoken to many business owners, and for those that were closed, for those that have been affected even more. But by and large, everyone has been affected, but some more than others. And here's an opportunity for us to re-establish ourselves as a powerhouse economy here in our community, in our county, and continue to do so by following all these practices and going beyond the minimum standards. So again, thank you so much. Yes.
We have a couple of questions. I just want to make sure that we get those answered. When in reference to child care centers, we been asked if we can reopen child care centers just for essential workers or children of essential workers.
At this time, we have not opened daycares, and that is something that we will continue to monitor in the next week or so, along the same lines with Governor Abbott, but we haven't thus far. But we will be visiting again with our local health authority, and once we establish any additional protocols, then we will come back and revisit that conversation about opening daycares. Thus far, we have not, but does not mean that we won't in the very near future. So again, that is something that we're looking at carefully, because by and large, when it comes to schools and rooms for young ones, that is one of those at-risk populations as well that we need to be careful, along with the older population and those that have complications already.
Yes, and that would also include your adult daycare. So we
that is correct.
Provide
that is correct
for those
that is
information on that. Now, I'm also getting questions about gatherings, group gatherings for events such as, weddings or quinceañeras? What is the order on that?
At this point, no. The answer is no to quinceañeras and weddings and large gatherings. At this point is no. Now, this is one thing that we need to be careful with, because of any type of gathering that includes large numbers of people. That's why right now we still have the 25%. But when it comes to other types, and this is one of the questions we're going to have, for example, can I go visit my neighbors? Well, at this point, social distancing recommends that you be careful, and we be careful of doing that right now in the next 2 weeks or so. But I would suggest not. But again, there's at this point, that's something that individuals are going to have to decide whether they take that risk. I would encourage you not to. If it's unnecessary, where you have to, where you go to other gatherings where there's going to be large groups of people, there's a reason why we had established that 10, less than 10 or 10 or less. And the whole point of that is to minimize the spread. So I would encourage for people to be cautious and not rush into making the mistake and letting our guard down to where we rush into these social gatherings. It's, for example, the beach. The beach is open right now. And if you see many of the photographs and many of the images of people still gathering, those are risky situations. And I would encourage our community to minimize from attending those type of functions at this point. There will be a time for that. And I know there's a people wanting to go and reactivate those type of events and those type of social gatherings. But at this point, I would strongly recommend that we hold off. It's still too early for us to yell victory at this point. I know we've had minimum cases, but there's a reason for that. And the next 2 weeks will indicate much for us. These next 2 weeks, as we begin to reopen, these are, again, protocols that we are following, that we want to follow. However, it's a wait and see. And the last thing we need is to have to shut down everything once again and go back to square one. So I urge you to be cautious. So to those individuals that want to get out there right away, that want to socialize, I say it with caution. I say it, be careful about getting out there, because there is no need. And going back to our order under Section 4 is, and I'll read it, all conferences, festivals, wedding or quinceañera venues, commercial sporting venues, and other types of assembly venues are required to remain closed. And that is per our order under Section 4. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but going back to quinceañeras and weddings, at this time, we're still closed for those types of venues.
Mayor, what about children at businesses? Being asked, will businesses not allow children to enter? I know there is one business in particular off of 3167 that is not allowing anyone under the age of 14 to enter. Of course, this impacts single parents with small children. Is there any rule or guidance on that?
At this point, it's going to be up to the businesses, and that's where the caution is. The caution is there's for example, going to a grocery store. Do I take the whole family? Is it possible? Is it not? Now, there's not going to be anything in place that prevents you. However, the business, they can establish certain requirements. And if there's a way to accommodate those individuals, then I would suggest, accommodating. However, there is the being careful with that, because continuing with this safe practices, even though we don't have an enforcement side of it, because remember, we cannot enforce it, but it's going to be, a lot of these are going to be outlined by the business practices. And that is something that as a business, you can also say and decide, okay, how am I going to continue to conduct business? And what are the protocols that we can establish that A, is going to help our community continue to fight COVID-19, but two, also, what does it take into consideration of the customers? And can we find a middle ground to be able to support our customers and at the same time make sure that we're taking care of their health and welfare of those customers? Now, again, if there are, for those individuals that might not have, then that's something that I would encourage you to talk to at that point, to the business owner, the manager at that point, if they're not allowing you. However, that is also for consideration, and that's something we can deal with individually. So if you're having issues with that, please follow up with our city manager or with Ms. Guillen and see if we can accommodate by talking to those businesses as well, and see if we can come up with, on an individual basis, can we come up with a possible solution to help out in this?
Mayor, if I may add, there's a question that came up. It's asking, how is the city going to enforce the dine-in regulations? Well, our code enforcement will be going around like they normally do, visiting businesses, and they'll do scheduled and unscheduled stops, and they'll be looking for those guidelines that they should be following and enforcing, the 25% rule as far as capacity goes. But that was a question that just came up.
Well, thank you. And that is something we will be, our code enforcement will be out, we'll be looking at the capacity. And keep in mind that the minimum standards by the governor, including that 25% capacity, those were established through executive order by governor. So we will be enforcing those. We will be out and about, and code enforcement will be checking into it. However, keep in mind that we do have this education, and education is going to be key here for everyone, for business community, for the customers, for people in general. There is a way to inform people of all the new regulations or standards, and at the same time do it in a way that's productive with that conversation, as opposed from an adversarial standpoint. No, it's educating people, and that's one thing that we have. Even when we were enforcing it through punitive criteria, or punitive, should I say, fines, and through all those means, we were still educating the public. And more so, that's going to be important today, is because all these protocols is, how do we educate the public to continue to take precautionary measures, and at the same time do it in a cautious, effective way that's going to minimize their health risk, or minimize the risk of contracting COVID-19. So again, education. All of us need to continue to be informed. Business owners get informed of all the practices, minimum standards, and customers as well. Employees, definitely. Employees that are going to be going back to work, make sure you inform yourselves as well, and the employers in general.
Some of the information for our dining callers who have a dining establishment, just to remind them that people that are going out to dine at their restaurant must maintain at least a 6-foot distance apart from other groups at all times, and this includes while you're waiting to be seated. And also that hand sanitizing stations be made available upon entry to the restaurant. Of course, they also indicate that no tables of more than 6 people are allowed in the establishment, and that condiments, silverware, flatware, glassware, or other traditional tabletop items are not left on any unoccupied table. And then, of course, you provide condiments to the customer only upon request and in single-use portions. And it's important also that they know that they must use disposable menus for each new patron. This is important for them to know. And then also going back to some of those places where are not, some of those establishments that are not yet open, people should avoid visiting bars, gyms, public swimming pools, interactive amusement venues such as bowling alleys and video arcades, massage establishments, tattoo studios, piercing studios, or cosmetology salons. This is all in the order, and that's downloadable on our website.
And to reiterate that point, if you look at and I don't know, I'm just going to put it out, but here's a checklist. And what this checklist does, for example, health protocols for serving your customers. And that is a checklist for restaurants. And I encourage all restaurants to look into these minimum standards, health protocols outlined by the governor. And it has a checklist specifically for customers, checklist specifically for the restaurant owners and the employees. Just as an example, parties maintain at least 6 feet distance apart from other parties at all times, including while waiting to be seated in the restaurant, as you were mentioning, Ms. Guillen. Make a hand sanitizing station. So all these protocols, and there's a checklist. So please download this manual, and it'll outline specifically targeting your business. What are the protocols? And there's a checklist. Now, on the checklist, remember, some of these, through our code enforcement, going back to our top-rated, Rio Grande City top-rated best business practices, we included the additional facial coverings, and that's on this list. Is recommended, but in our case, for top-rated, we want to include that as a requirement or mandate. Like I said earlier, it's a little bit different for restaurants, for dining, because customers obviously are going to be eating. So, and if there's going to be a wearing of the facial covering, it's from the point of entry to the table. And then, of course, at that point, they would remove the facial covering when they're eating, and as they're leaving, of course, they can put that back on. But for the employees, definitely a facial covering would be recommended for employees, which already have. If you're looking at the restaurants, for example, that have already been operating, you see them and they are wearing facial coverings, and they were wearing gloves and doing all this. And that's something that I would encourage the restaurants to continue to practice as a requirement for their employees, to continue to do that, because those are excellent practices to minimize the spread. And just restaurant operation in general, for customers that see that, of course, that encourages customers to feel that there's a level of safety standards that are being practiced in that facility, and therefore consequently gives you more of a sense that, you know what, they're following those practices. I feel safe, and I'm willing to frequent that restaurant or that business as a result of those practices they're following, because they have my health and welfare in mind. Any other questions, Ms. Guillen?
We are being asked about, well, actually, we're asked off another subject here about what assistance will be provided to businesses on behalf of the city concerning taxes, since they depend on them to pay those taxes before they were forced to close.
Are they asking if we have any type of stimulus package in mind?
Yeah, well, yeah, the specific question is, what assistance will be provided to the business on behalf of the city concerning property tax, since we depend on the sales to pay those taxes, since we were forced to close?
Well, and that is something that I have spoken with our city manager on, and to have, in fact, we were talking about that the other day, about is there anything that we can come up with as far as any type of stimulus package. And at this time, we don't have anything per se that we're going to do. Okay, now what we have been doing thus far is, of course, not for those businesses and residents, for example, that can't pay their water at this time. We are allowing those opportunities to pay in payments, or not turning off their water, for example, the things that we have already been doing and have had in place to not disconnect for those businesses that have been struggling, or for residents in general that have been struggling with this. And we're going to continue following some of those. And at this point, that is something that we're considering. We have not made a decision. Of course, that is something that would have to come through the commission in order to determine any other ways that the city could help, aside from just a blanket way of saying, okay, we're gonna not, or we're not going to require any type of taxes and so on. No, we have not come to that determination as of yet. However, those are conversations are still being had at this time, and see what other types of stimulus opportunities can we do. Because keep in mind, bear in mind that, and I'll be frank with you, bear in mind that it's a small municipality. We're also struggling. We're going to be struggling too to make ends meet as a municipal government. So bear that in mind, that what we're doing is going to be in a way that we help some, but at the same time, we cannot put ourselves in a predicament either where we're not going to be able to pay our own bills because we're not able, or bringing in the revenues that we normally have. So it's, and I'm not going to say that we're not going to, but I cannot commit at this time until we ourselves to know exactly how far our current budget is going to take us, not this, going back to not, or considering that we might not bring in the revenues that we were anticipating prior to this COVID-19 global pandemic. So we're in the same situation to where we have to be careful how much of this we're able to sustain as a municipality before we commit to any type of revenues or stimulus packages. And again, I have to be frank with you and say, you know what, we ourselves have to be careful, because then if we're not able to pay our own employees or be in a situation where we are financially strained, then that's going to hurt us too, and we won't be able to provide the services that the community depends on as well. So it's one of those, we're considering it, but only in the opportunities where we might be able to, we might not. But thus far, the way we have been helping is by not going out and disconnecting, for example, any water because people are not able to pay, or businesses that haven't been able to pay, things of that nature. Those are things that we already have in place, that we are following through, and things that we have been doing thus far in a way to help, plus providing, for example, we've had food distributions in a way to help out the community as well. The little that we can help out with this disinfectant, for example, is 300 gallons that we're providing to our business community. That's another way that we're helping out. So things that we're doing that are accumulating, maybe not one, here's a check, but other ways that are still contributing. And in reference to the rest, that's something that we will continue to monitor and see if at some point we're able to do that as a type of stimulus package.
Mayor, in reference to the disinfectant, we're being asked if that distribution will include local churches or places of worship.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's already going to be, wow, it's already 11 something. So anything else before we wrap it up today, Ms. Guillen? Any other specific questions? If we didn't answer your questions, do please forward those questions to City Hall here with Ms. Guillen or Mr. Perez or Mr. Milan. Please do follow up with any questions. I again thank you so much for your time, for your patience, for your commitment to keeping our community safe, to helping us continue to promote all these safety protocols. And I know it's a challenge. It has been difficult. Businesses have been hurting, as we stated earlier, and it has been in having to deal with this global pandemic and the nature of what we have dealt with and what we will continue to deal with within through this recovery. And I reiterate the point: let's make sure that the second wave is not worse than the first. And I must continue to reiterate that. Let us not allow the second wave be worse than the first wave. And the way we can do that is let us not allow our guard down. Let us not let our guard down at this point. Let's continue to operate with a level of urgency, the level of seriousness of this COVID-19. Let us continue operating that way. And if we do so, I think we will manage the situation and continue the recovery in a safe, effective, efficient way that's gonna put us in a position where we will get back to some level of normalcy and supersede the accomplishments that were established before this global pandemic. So again, thank you so much to our business community and to everyone that's been listening to us today. Thank you for your time, for your commitment to making Rio Grande City a better place to live, to work, and to enjoy better quality of life. To everyone that has and will continue to help out, thank you. Mil gracias. A heartfelt thank you. Anything else, Ms. Guillen or Mr. Perez? Any final thoughts or words?
Just a reminder, we will be posting all this information that's been documented on our website, and we will be recognizing the businesses that go forward and are committing with us and ensuring we maintain these protocols in place for the next month, and so that we can recognize them and give them thanks and encourage customers to go visit them.
Ms. Guillen?
Yes, I echo that. And then also just to remind our businesses to download and sign and return business commitment to keeping our community COVID-19 free. That'll be on our website. And I believe a link will also be made available on our Facebook page.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Mr. Milan, Ms. Guillen, Mr. Perez. Thank you, Chief Castillo and Chief Muñiz, and to all the staff here at Rio Grande City at City Hall. I want to thank all the City Commission and the employees of Rio Grande City. They've done a tremendous job. They continue to work. They continue to provide services to our community. Thank you so much for being a part of the solution and continuing to serve our community in the best capacity possible. And again, thank you to our business community. I look forward to continuing to promote best practices and continue to remove or to slow the spread of COVID-19. And Godspeed. Thank you and God bless. Thank you so much.